Hey everybody, this is Maha,
And this is Dylan.
and we're the hosts of That Wasn't Too Hard, a podcast that explores everything from process improvement to human-centered design. So Dylan, are you ready to get started?
I am so excited.
Okay, Dylan, thank you so much. Let's get started. Dylan, today's episode is going to be about the cost of uncertainty. Like many of the plethora of costs out there that businesses have to think about, what is this cost and what makes it so special?
The cost of uncertainty is a hard to measure cost. It is not the cost of a candy bar or a cost of a machine or even the cost of 60 developer hours or something. It's a cost to lead time or a friction of getting things done. It's an internal cost within you and how efficient you make yourself. If you are worried about a lot of stuff, or really anything, that's going to have an incremental slowing effect on your ability to decide things. Mm-hmm. And it's going to have an incremental slowing effect on your ability to just get stuff done because you're going to be a little distracted.
So it sounds to be like it's the cost of that distraction of thinking about things that may not be urgent and may not need to be solved. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. And I think people with anxiety are like all sorts of familiar with this idea because there's a certain point at which like you just go in this cycle. If you've got too many things to worry about, you just keep cycling on all of the maybes in your life. And I think we're all kind of familiar with the idea that our minds are not statistical machines. We worry about things out of proportion for the amount of impact, like the risk to our actual life or the likelihood of the thing happening. You can think of all sorts of crazes. There was the case of someone maybe putting a razor blade in an apple during Halloween in the 80s, and just on and on. People get really wrapped up in worrying about things, and it has a detrimental effect on their life.
So on one hand, there is this, just like you talked about, there is this anxiety that gets kind of chases us and sometimes even drains in our energy and our attention. On the other hand, though, what about normal people that don't have anxiety? Why do they have to worry about something like the cost of unreliability or the cost of uncertainty in this case?
Sure. Normal people. Oh, that's a 4-letter word. It's a 6-letter word, but you know what I mean.
The normies, yes.
Yeah, the normies, the norm. I would say this is not a binary. Everybody struggles with this to some extent. Mm-hmm. And in extreme cases, you find people who have made their lives very efficient by reducing uncertainties. Mm-hmm. You can kind of think of some examples of these CEOs who only have one kind of shirt they ever wear to work, and they've got 12 of them. Yep. And they've got 3 identical suits, and they got 5 identical pairs of shoes. There's no uncertainty in their life about what they're putting on. It is not something that occupies any thought at all.
It sounds to me like you're kind of talking about even people like President Obama. He used to do that. And
or did he?
Oh yeah, he did. He did. It's not just a Steve Jobs thing. It's actually one of those gimmicks in a lot of by a lot of leaders that say you're trying to reduce You're doing it because you're trying to reduce any sort of decision making. They consider
Mhm.
decision making as something that could be exhausted within a day. And by reducing
Right.
the amount of things that they have to make decisions on, i.e., what do I wear in the morning, they're able to
Mhm.
give their unduly decision making attention to decisions that really need to be made. So it sounds to me like
Yeah.
there's some sort of relationship with cognitive overload. Does that
Right.
sound real? Does that sound realistic to you as
Yeah.
well?
I buy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can talk, I mean, many people talk about decision fatigue, and many people talk about like an inability to make a decision. I think you're spot on. And yeah, that's a great summary. We're because even the people that are worrying about something, they've got too many unknowns or maybes in their head.
Mhm. And it's a constant
I
working
bet,
engine.
yeah, I bet that impacts the same sort of fatigue that making decisions does. That sounds right.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like this cost of unreliability or cost of uncertainty is this sort of cognitive overload or this sort of cognitive
Mhm.
element that is natural for humans because we will always think about what ifs. We will always have to worry about something in the back of our head. But when that worry becomes so detrimental, it sounds to me like it also not only can affect your ability to make the right decisions or to make decisions at all, but it might even cloud you on which
Mhm.
decisions to make and why, and which things are important and why.
I think the novel part of it is that most people do not see this as a cost because it's hard to
Mhm.
measure. I think fancy economists at, Chicago School of Economics or something, I'm sure have written papers about insurance and how when you have insurance, your total uncertainty goes down. And so you can plan for the future and you can invest. And there's that aspect of how reducing uncertainty in your life, being able to depend on something, can enable you to kind of break that cycle of, I don't want to do anything, maybe that indecisiveness,
Mhm.
and go forward and just try something and do something. How does
Well,
that strike you?
well, it strikes me like you're now touching. Strikes me like we're actually moving even beyond this right now and going even to something like the hierarchy of needs, but more on
Mm,
an organizational level. It's almost like we're kind of giving ourselves a chance to make mistakes in this case, and there's no, let's say, fear or there's no need that
yeah.
is unmet that is holding us back.
Yeah. I think you're right to bring up Maslow. I mean, if I put myself in you know, the caveman perspective, and I think, is a tiger going to eat me? Like that's a consuming worry. And
Yes.
if you can somehow eliminate that worry, you can start thinking about other things like, what am
File.
I going to eat today? Right? Or like, where should I sleep? And as you work on those worries, those needs, those rational worries, maybe,
Mhm.
then you can free yourself to do more long-term effort and planning.
Now,
Yeah.
here's a question back to you, Dylan. Where have you seen examples of this cost of unreliability or cost of uncertainty kind of pop up or creep up? And
Mhm.
how have you seen it kind of manifest even in organizations?
Right. I've got at least three.
Okay.
So the first example
Oh, so I don't get to
is
choose. Darn it.
CFOs.
Mhm.
So there is a lot of data within, like, aimed at the developer space, at the people building the tech of tomorrow,
Yes.
that what they don't understand is that their CFO cares more about predicting the cost next quarter
Mhm.
than he or she does about actually what the cost is going to be, because that's very unintuitive to someone not practiced in finance. Being able to predict costs is enormously valuable.
Mhm. Very true, actually.
And this is usually comes up when you're talking about like AWS bills, because it's very easy. You can get like a $12 million surprise bill in a month. And that will make your CFO tear her hair out like real fast. That is not what she wants to see. So there's one example of being able to reduce. Your CFO is going to go to a lot of effort to try to get in front of a surprise $12 million AWS bill, like a or even a surprise $25,000 AWS bill, and
Large costs, let's just say that. But then,
sure,
but then tell me
but it's the
how
surprise.
it's a surprise.
Even if you're a $12 billion company, the surprise and the worry. That's the scary thing for your CFO, being not able to predict and plan for the future.
But then a question back here, just to kind of put us back on track. Sounds to me like this is usually a fear then or a cost that arises from unreliability or uncertainty that has existed before and might repeat itself. What about nowadays? I mean, we are in a time of complete uncertainty. I mean, people used to scream about VUCA, and we're beyond VUCA right now, in all honesty. So, what is the cost of reliability or unreliability, excuse me, in the case of things that we could predict but have been predicting badly or not really well, versus the cost of unreliability to things that we just cannot predict?
I suspect that if you were able to big data every transaction, every meaningful business event in the world for the last 100 years, I think you would find that the unreliability, that the surprise events have steadily decreased. And some people have studied this. Yeah, I mean, fine, but I mean, look at some other metrics. Look at like one of the most, think about the insurance industry. One of their most scary, financially scary scenarios is war.
Yep.
War's been significant. I mean, like, because everything gets blown up. Look at Ukraine. War's been substantially lower year over year for the last 100 years, or especially the last 300 years. And without as frequent wars, the insurance industry doesn't have to worry about, covering damages or even talking to the phone to someone whose apartment building was blown up by a mortar. Equivalently, disease is way down. And some economists have even pointed at the absurdly low interest rates as an indication of stability on worldwide markets. I don't think we have enough data to like deeply solve this problem, but I suspect like even the uncertainty in my life, am I going to die in a car accident? Way lower likelihood today than my parents when they were 6.
Very true.
Or 30.
Very true. So Dylan, what's another example of cost unreliability in an organization?
I think the next best example is software unreliability. Whenever something happens and the user doesn't expect it, they're going to be especially on their guard for, well, did it work the next time? So it's very easy to see examples like if you have a banking system and you really need to make sure that if the money comes out of this person's account, it goes into this person's account. and you don't want any errors. And if an error happens, you're going to spend a lot of time to make sure it does work correctly. And like on a larger scale, even small things, when someone clicks a box and moves it and then lets go, and then like 3 seconds later the box is back where it started, they're gonna be frustrated really quickly, and they're just gonna always be thinking about, what if this thing doesn't work right again? And the more
The connection is a
So
little
for
bit
our
weird. That's
listeners,
true.
Maha and I just hit an excellent example of exactly this concern. We are starting to have some concerns about the reliability of that recording service and what we should do or could do to address it. The third example is when we just started about talking about with insurance, how you can read studies where people in less economically mature regions have exposure to insurance. They have an opportunity to hedge against something like a drought. And if they buy the drought insurance, it allows them to plan for the future in a way that they couldn't, because they're not worried about, are my children going to starve, because they have the insurance money should the rain not come. To me, this is a great financial model for pricing out the cost of unreliability. The rain is unreliable, and you can do some accounting to figure out how much is that unreliable event affecting, and how much is it worth in an industry. You can do similar models for the cost of unreliable electrical grids or unreliable transport chains. A lot of modeling has been done for that within the last several years with COVID. A lot of supply chain issues changed a lot of economics and caused a lot of damage. I think my point here today is that's easy to measure. What's hard to measure is the small but prevalent cost of unreliability, even on a individual hour by hour scale.
Then what's the difference in this case? Or kind of how does the cost of unreliability in this case then tie in with things like risk management?
Those models do not take into account the cost of the uncertainty for the flood. They do not consider that everybody is going to have the risk of a flood in their mind. If you don't help them convince them that a flood is not going to meaningfully impact them, then that's going to be a substantial extra cost to the effectiveness of your staff. Sure. I think also, as we build systems, we undervalue resiliency. If we think, it causes my customers 10 minutes per day of downtime or of like unplanned, it just doesn't work for them. And we think, oh, well, their time's worth this much. This is how much their business is. We don't think of their suspicion of our brand and their the message of mistrust that it creates within them. And how much more valuable to them is, this thing's rock solid, it never fails. It's not failed, not once. And building platforms or capabilities that don't fail once, I think has exponential returns.
But it sounds to me like it's almost like a sales gimmick. So Dylan, is there anything else that we might have not touched on? Because to me, it sounds like we've covered pretty much even more than we even expected.
Yeah. For listeners and product owners and people either fulfilling or selling, consider hard how your decisions to build less than perfect solutions impact your customers. There might be substantial, hard to measure benefit to just clearing out all the bugs, fixing all the bugs, and being able to say, we don't have any open bugs. It all works perfectly. That might be a substantial benefit to your customers and worth more than you expect in extra margin.
I would agree to that, and probably is going to help you not get sued by the clients for any other reasons. I mean, I can remember only one example on my head, which is Ford thinking that they're blowing or they're exploding gasoline tanks were not a really big cost, and then them discovering otherwise.
Right. Oh man, how much did the Edsel hurt them? So
Ooh,
much.
ooh, still probably does because I still because hey, it's even beyond my age bracket, if I even want to call that, and I even know it, and I still remember it because that
Oh
is like
yeah.
ouchie. That is ouchie. So thank you, Dylan, for your time, and thank you to our listeners for listening again, and for hopefully enjoying our podcast as well. Don't forget to click like and subscribe on YouTube, or even follow us on any of your favorite platforms. If you have any feedback for us, do drop us a message on LinkedIn or contact us through, well, LinkedIn, actually, to be honest. And let me just finish up by saying, okay, Dylan, see, that wasn't too hard.
Okay.
Thank you, Dylan. Well, yeah, but I like
Bye,
that actually.
folks.
Signature. Bye.